is that right? Okay, okay. Well, it is time for the Daily Discourse, and we're talking to Lesley Ann Foster. But let me tell you what it's about. And we're looking at a couple of issues, but this first story, um, we focus on women leading efforts to tackle gender-based violence and gambling-related harm and other social challenges. While today's guests are from South Africa, the issues that they're addressing are resources resonate rather across the continent, where communities continue to grapple with violence, addiction, and their needs for stronger prevention and advocacy. Now, as many countries across Africa work to combat gender based violence, advocates say that lasting progress will depend on prevention, community action, and stronger support for survivors. Well, joining us now is Dr. Lesley Ann Foster, who's the founder and executive director of Masimanyane, which is a Women's Rights International, a South African non-government organization that works to prevent gender-based violence and advance rights of women and girls. Thank you so much indeed for joining us on the program, Dr. Lesley. All right, so I think you're on mute, Lesley. If you just want to unmute yourself.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear now. So, Women's
Great.
Month
Thank you. Good
celebrates
morning.
women's achievements, but why is it also important to recognize women leading efforts to tackle gender-based violence?
Well, I think all the gains that we've had over the past 3 decades have been led by women. It's something because it affects us directly as women. We have taken up the struggle for the prevention of gender-based violence very strongly. We continue to lead that. So we've had many changes, we've had many successes, political will, structures, programs, policies, and so forth. All of it has been the advocacy that has been conducted by women and particularly young women in the country at the moment.
So, gender-based violence is pretty complex in terms of causes, reasons, societal issues, and you talk a lot about prevention, it being just as important as responding to survivors. In a situation like gender-based violence, what does prevention look like in practice?
Prevention is multifaceted. We can consider the support of survivors as a form of prevention. Of course, we have to have a legal framework. We have to have the policies and procedures in place because that determines, how we should be guided in addressing gender-based violence. Over the past few decades, the first responses to gender-based violence globally were in the establishment of shelters because what women recognized is that women need to be safe. They need to be protected from, experiences of gender-based violence. And since then, we've understood that there are structural drivers of gender-based violence, the inequality in our society, the fact that most of our societies are patriarchal in nature, which means that women enjoy very low status and they have to be recognized on an equal basis with men. And that is really the challenge we have with prevention now is we have provided the services, we take care of women, we give them psychosocial services, we give them paralegal services, which is very important for the experiences they have in the moment. But it is not enough. What we understand from prevention now is that we have to look at how we change the attitudes, the norms and standards in our society. And we have a very fractured society, as you know, because of our history. And we can't, we can say that our circumstances have changed, but people haven't changed. And so we have to work on how we change mindsets in order to change the way women and girls are viewed in our society. That's an important part of prevention. Prevention also includes the training of state agents, the police, the judiciary, health services, social services, and so forth. We have to train them to be able to understand the particular challenges that women face and how they can better support women that are survivors of the scourge we have in our society. So it's multifaceted, and we need all of the elements of prevention to work together for us to change the trajectory of violence in our country. At the moment, we don't have that. We have, responses that are all over the place, but not being pulled together as a cohesive force to prevent gender-based violence.
So, I guess community involvement is quite important, especially when you're trying to change a society.
Absolutely. We can't, for instance, legislate for change. Think, okay, we have the laws and policies in place, something's going to change. It doesn't work that way. That provides us with a framework. It guides us on how we should be responding and what we can do. But we need community involvement. So actually having boots on the ground, going into communities, working with groups of women, men and boys, to talk about what protection looks like, what does safety look like, what do human rights to dignity look like, and getting them to understand that and being able to change the way they see the engagement, with women and girls, well, men and boys. It works both ways. I mean, we've got to be looking at the violence also that happens in the lives of young men and how that you know, rolls over into relationships with women and girls. And we're seeing violence now from very young ages of girls, 3, 4 years old, to older women. The murder of older women, the rape and murder of older women is also, spiking. So we have to work with communities. Issues around teenage pregnancies, you can't deal with only the girl child and you put all the shame and blame on her because it's not her responsibility alone. We have to work together. We have to build safety nets within our communities. And we can only do that with boots on the ground, going into schools, into community forums, into women's groups, working with men and boys, which is work that men have to do to change, the perceptions of how they see women. And also to have forums of men who are good men that are working to serve as role models. One of the big problems we have in our society is that families do not have male presence in those families that can provide positive role models. So there's a lot of work that has to be done in different ways, and we need to continue. We need to step up our prevention campaigns within the country in order to change the current environment, which is very, very, very harmful to women.
Perhaps finally and briefly, if you can, what gives you hope that lasting change is possible?
I am very hopeful because I see young people using their voices and their agency, to create positive impacts in our communities. We do a lot of work with young women, and we train them on human rights, on equality issues, and so forth. And then they start doing exciting things. They're writing about their experiences. There's artists they're working. They're starting food security programs. It's not what we teach them to do, but we facilitate their thinking beyond what the limitations of the environments are, and they rise to, greater heights. So I see a lot of positivity in our society, in our community. It's not big enough because we have vast numbers of women who are not being reached through programs either by the state or civil society. And we hope that with the National Council on Gender-Based Violence, which has recently been announced, that maybe they will be able to pull together, all the work that's been done in the country, because there's a massive amount of work that's been done. And then they can use, the learnings from that to change their own circumstances, because the state has a role to play, a very important role to play, but society has to meet that as well, has to match that, and has to go beyond, the just sitting around and hoping for change to happen to them, but become the actual change agents in our society. And I see that happening with young people. I see social media is a very big problem to people in and young people, especially because it is so violent towards them. But it's also a tool for good, a tool that can be used to to educate people, to bring about change in our society. I'm very hopeful. I think that we have a beautiful country. We have many challenges, and I don't deny that at all. And women in particular are faced with those challenges. But we have to be hopeful that we can and will change the world around to be a better, safer place in which women and girls are fully protected.
Amen, amen, amen. Dr. Lesley, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so, so much indeed for
Thank
joining
you.
us and speaking to us about this issue that we should be speaking about all the time.
Thank you very much. I'm passionate about it. And I know it will get better as we go along in life. Thank you.
Wonderful. We live in hope. That was Dr. Lesley Ann Foster, founder and executive director of Masimanyane, which is a women's rights international in South Africa, speaking to us about preventing gender-based violence and the role of women in advocacy.
Let the drums guide you through Amapiano energy and jazz sophistication.